Hello, my name is Virinder Kalra. I'm a professor of sociology at the University of Warwick, and this is the third video for the Stories That Made Us Migration and Identity event that is taking place on the 23rd of July 2022. In the previous two videos, I talked about migrant writers who came to the UK in the 1950s and 1960s, and I gave you an example of one such writer. And in this video, I'm going to talk about another woman writer who wrote in Punjabi, and will give you a short extract from one of her works. So the second writer that I want to talk about is someone called Jasvir Kang. And as this event that we're doing today is very much based in commentary and focused on commentary, it's really appropriate that Jasvir is from commentary, and that she is also the mother of Hardesh Virk, who is one of the people who you will be hearing from if you're watching the event live, or you can hear from if you're watching this recorded. So Jasvir migrated to the UK in the late 1960s from Indian Punjab. She came for purposes of marriage. When she got here, she became involved in Punjabi language activities, poetry, readings and events, and ultimately she wrote 3 books that were published. But she was also someone who was a radio presenter for over 20 years, and actually much of her poetry was broadcast, and much of her sort of story writing or her skills come from the oral tradition. And so actually Jasvir really is quite unusual in the sense that she is really someone who moves very well from orality in terms of radio into publishing and into writings. And so the text that I'm going to talk about or I'm going to read from today is a short story book called Aurat Abla Nahi Hai, which is Women Are Not Powerless, or A Woman Is Not Weak. And this should give you an idea of the kind of feminism or womanism that Jasvir was promoting. All of the stories in this book are pretty strong, is the word I would use. They're quite powerful in the sense that they tell a very raw story about women's lives, but they also have very strong messaging. And so Jasvir's work is one in which I would call kind of, again, I think she's quite an unusual writer to the extent in which she's such a strident feminist. And this is, again, someone who came from rural India, from rural Punjab, migrated to this country, and a lot of the stories in this book, I think, are reflections of what she has seen around her in her many years in the country. She has, at the moment, got dementia, so I wish actually she could be here and could be doing this with me. Actually, it would have been a really nice thing. But this is, in many ways, this is a homage to her voice. So I'm going to read from Doshi. So Doshi is the name of the protagonist in the short story, and I'll read 2 paragraphs of the Punjabi. I might read a little bit more, and then I'll go into the translation of the story and give you a summary of the story, and then read the English, which is a kind of some of the key parts of the story. So the story is called Doshi. Doshi ਦੇ ਵਿਆਹ ਹੋਇਆ ਨੂੰ ਅਜੇ 4 ਸਾਲ ਹੀ ਹੋਏ ਸਨ। ਇਨ੍ਹਾਂ 4 ਸਾਲਾਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਉਸਦੇ 4 ਹੀ ਕੁੜੀਆਂ ਹੋ ਗਈਆਂ ਸਨ। ਉਸਦੀ ਉਮਰ ਤਾਂ ਇੰਨੀ ਨਹੀਂ ਸੀ ਅਜੇ ਹੋਈ, ਪਰ ਛੋਟੀ ਉਮਰ ਵਿੱਚ ਵਿਆਹ ਹੋਣ ਕਰਕੇ ਤੇ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਬੱਚੇ ਹੋਣ ਨਾਲ ਉਸਦੀ ਸਿਹਤ ਬਹੁਤ ਕਮਜ਼ੋਰ ਹੋ ਗਈ ਸੀ। ਜਦੋਂ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਚੌਥੀ ਕੁੜੀ ਹੋਈ ਸੀ ਤਾਂ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨੇ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀ ਕਿ ਤੇਰੇ ਸਿਹਤ ਦੇ ਮੁਤਾਬਕ ਇੰਨੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਬਹੁਤ ਹਨ, ਹੁਣ ਹੋਰ ਬੱਚੇ ਨਾ ਹੋਵਣ ਤੇ ਠੀਕ ਹੈ। ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨੇ ਤਾਂ ਉਸ ਨੂੰ ਪਹਿਲਾਂ ਹੀ ਕਹਿ ਦਿੱਤਾ ਸੀ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਸ ਦੇ 2 ਬੱਚੇ ਸਨ, ਪਰ ਉਹ ਫਿਰ ਵੀ ਲਗਾਤਾਰ ਬੱਚੇ ਪੈਦਾ ਕਰੀ ਜਾ ਰਹੀ ਸੀ। ਪਹਿਲੇ ਤਾਂ ਤੋਸ਼ੀ ਨੇ ਵੀ ਕੋਈ ਜ਼ਰੂਰੀ ਨਾ ਸਮਝਿਆ ਕਿ ਬੱਚੇ ਥੋੜੇ ਹੋਣ ਚਾਹੀਦੇ, ਪਰ ਜਦੋਂ ਉਸਨੂੰ ਚੌਥੀ ਕੁੜੀ ਹੋਈ ਤਾਂ ਉਸਨੂੰ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗਾ ਜ਼ਿੰਮੇਵਾਰੀ ਵੀ ਦੁੱਗਣੀ ਹੋ ਗਈ। ਉਸਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਆਰਾਮ ਵੀ ਨਾ ਮਿਲਦਾ, ਉਸਦੀ ਸਾਰੀ ਦਿਹਾੜੀ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਂਦੀ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਦੀ ਦੇਖਭਾਲ ਕਰਦੀ ਨੂੰ। ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਉਸਨੂੰ ਪੂਰਾ ਆਰਾਮ ਨਾ ਮਿਲਦਾ, ਕਿਉਂਕਿ ਛੋਟੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਹੋਣ ਕਰਕੇ ਕਈ ਵਾਰ ਰਾਤ ਨੂੰ ਉੱਠਦੇ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਗੱਲਾਂ ਤੋਂ ਤੰਗ ਆ ਕੇ ਉਸਨੇ ਡਾਕਟਰ ਨਾਲ ਗੱਲ ਕੀਤੀ ਕਿ ਇਸਨੂੰ ਕੀ ਕਰਨਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਹੈ। So this is a story about Doshi, the protagonist, who's a woman who has got married, and after marriage she's had 4 daughters, and the doctor has told her that she shouldn't have any more children, that it's very bad for her health, but there's a pressure from her husband and from her mother-in-law and from the wider family to have a son, and so she is forced into having more children. And so we'll take up the quote here, or we'll take up the quotation here from when she's had another daughter. So she now has 5 daughters, and the family, the son and the mother-in-law and the wider family conspire to get rid of Doshi and her daughters. And so how they do this is by leaving a gas cooker on, and so they plan to kill Doshi and her daughters, and that's the plan. And so I quote here: "Following the plan, one day when the opportunity arose, they let the natural gas leak into the house and went out to a relative's house. Doshi was asleep in the upper floor bedroom with her 5 daughters. The poor woman was left sleeping forever with her children. For a short while, there was panic and commotion in the house and the wider community, but after a while it ended. The family got Ramu married again." Ramu was Toshi's husband. So the remainder of the story talks about how a second wife comes into this family, but she isn't able to have children, and so the same family begin talk of having a third marriage. But she's an unnamed character in the short story, stands up to the family and says that you killed the woman who gave you children, but you'll not be able to do that to me. And the story ends with her saying to the family as a whole, and this is from the story: "I will never let your son have a third marriage, and if you try and do anything then, if you're worried about your future name, I will finish your whole family on that day. People like you only understand this kind of punishment. I may be tolerating this living hell, but I'm not going to let you live in peace." Now, this unnamed woman in the story is such an ardent and strident voice. And while there is very little sentimentality or actually a kind of sense of hope which one might get from other story writing styles, there is a very strong sense of courage. And in that way, Jasvir's writing really stands out in terms of migrant women writing.